أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Dr. Suzy Ismail from Cornerstone, and I'm excited to begin with you the first episode of our 30-day series in which we explore resilience, mental health, emotional health, social and relational wellness, and how all of these elements intersect underneath the bigger umbrella of spiritual well-being. So when we go through difficulties in life, a lot of times we may struggle and feel like we're struggling alone. We may struggle and feel like the tests are so heavy that we're not able to talk about it with anyone, that we're not able to share it, that we don't know where to turn. But we know that Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran reminds us in Surah Al-Baqarah in verse 155 that surely we will be tested. And we will be tested with something of fear and something of hunger and loss, a loss of wealth, a loss of lives, a loss of fruits. And we know that these tests are promised to us, but we also know that Allah Azza wa Jal guides us through any test that we are put through, and that any test and tribulation we may encounter is a test and tribulation that can be a purification of our souls, a way of getting closer and closer to Allah. But when we're going through that test, when we're going through that difficulty, it may impact us, and it may impact us mentally, emotionally, socially, and relationally. We may struggle with anxiety, we may struggle with depression, we may struggle with pulling away from our family members, our friends. We may struggle and we may feel like we're struggling alone. But the reality is that when we look at these tests and try to better understand them, we see that they are tests that not only we've been tested with, but that the beloved prophets have also experienced these tests, and that the guidance of how to get through these tests exists in understanding the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in understanding the verses of the Quran that guide us towards a better knowledge and seeking of understanding of the journeys of the prophets that came before the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. So as we better understand these tests, as we better understand our emotional responses, it begins with first looking at each aspect of those tests. So when we look at the concept of al-khawf, which Allah Azza wa Jal tells us in the Quran will be one of the tests that we'll face, we recognize that al-khawf is rooted in that fear. Which one of us has not felt fear at some point in our life? Maybe throughout the pandemic, we feared for our health or the health of our loved ones. Maybe we feared for our loss of jobs and wealth. Maybe we feared for the uncertainty of the future. Maybe we have fears that are rooted in not knowing how our children will turn out. Maybe we have fears in not knowing whether or not we will find a spouse who will help us in this journey. Maybe we have fears of failing. All of these fears are fears that Allah Azza wa Jal has knowledge of. And we know that Allah Azza wa Jal reminds us in the Quran, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, that He will not burden a soul with a burden that's greater than that soul will bear or that soul can bear. So whatever test we're going through, recognizing and understanding first of all the nature of the test is the first step in journeying towards the path of healing. After that awareness of the test, we seek an awareness of the impact of that test on us. And that impact is one that's very holistic. So we need to see, how does it impact our emotional health? How does it impact our mental health? How does it impact our relationships, our social aspects? How does it impact our spirituality? Do we find ourselves turning away from Allah Azza wa Jal during that test, or do we find ourselves drawing nearer and nearer to Him? And there is no better time than the month of the Quran, during this month of Ramadan, for us to dive deeper into an understanding of how the Quran can be part of that journey of healing, how the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam can guide us through those difficulties, how it, following in the footsteps of the prophets that came before the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we can also better understand the issues of grief, of sadness, of sorrow, of depression. We can better understand how to avoid despair. So join us every day in Ramadan, inshallah, as we better understand each of those topics. In our next episode, we're going to take a deep dive into anxiety, understanding how our fears can develop into anxiety and anxious episodes and what we can do about it. I hope to see you in our next episode, inshallah. Jazakum Allahu khair, wassalamu alaikum, and I hope that this Ramadan is a Ramadan of beauty and benefit for all, inshallah.